Hello everyone. So for today's cards, I'm actually going to make two cards instead of one because I've got these two new polycraft images from CC Designs. This first one's called Sparky and the other one's called Brains. So cute little boy and girl images with a pencil and a little apple. So perfect for back to school and teacher cards. And I can't even believe it's the end of July and school is going to be starting before we know it, which is nuts. So I wanted to get these cards made. So I stamped them onto some CC Designs Cobalt Quality 80-pound cardstock with my favorite things, black licorice hybrid ink. And then I die cut them both with an MFT pierced rectangle dynamics. So got that all die cut and done. So just one less thing. And then I'm going to use my Copic markers to color them in. And I've super sped up the Copic coloring again because I didn't do anything super fabulous. I kept things fairly simple since I was doing so much coloring and coloring two images this time. So I did my go-to skin color, which is E50, E21, E13, and then R20 for the cheeks. And yeah, that's been like my go-to color combination for skin tones for years. I mix it up every once in a while, but that's mostly what I do. For their hair, I did mix it up a bit. For the little boy's hair, I did E44, 47, and 49. And I just basically flicked the color on, starting from the lightest and working my way to the darkest. And I just kept going back and forth until I was happy with it. So no blending or anything. So you just kind of get that definition. And then for her hair, I use E23, 25, 27, and 29. At the end of this and on my blog, I always post a picture with like a sticky note with all the colors listed, just, for reference. And her hair, I was a little more free with it since just from the way this image is drawn, her hair looks a little more wavy, messy, so I was kind of a little more wavy and messy with the lines, but same thing, I just worked lightest to darkest and just kind of drew in lines and just keep going back and forth until I'm happy with it. So fairly simple. It's one of those things that while you're doing it, it doesn't look the greatest, but then when you're done and maybe walk away from it, come back, whatever, it looks fine. So once I was done their hair, I can go on and color their little school outfits. So I'm choosing colors to match my pattern paper. I get asked that a lot, like how do I choose the colors I use, my thought process. With this, I pulled out the images and then I found a set of pattern paper I've had forever. And it was perfect for this. You'll see it in a minute. So I just based all the colors I wanted to use off of the pattern paper. So I'm using kind of an aqua color and a navy and a red, of course, and then yellow for the pencil, and then a little bit of green for the little worm. And for all the clothing and actually every other element on here, I'm only using two different colors of Copics just to keep things simple. So I'm not doing a whole lot of shading and blending. Yeah, again, just to keep it all a little bit quicker and easier to do. And it looks fine in my opinion. So colored everything and then did the pencils last. So colored them in with the yellow and then I grabbed some of my warm gray Copics. Those are kind of my favorites for some shading and just a little bit of ground for them to stand on. So I always do W3 first and then I add a bit of W1 and you can just see it kind of blends it out. And then I take my W00 and that just blends it out even more. And then I took the W1 and the W00 just to add a little bit more shading around the little images, just to give them that little extra bit of depth, but not too much, not going to put too much extra effort. And then the pattern paper, like I mentioned, it's this Simple Story Smarty Pants pattern paper. I've had it for forever, but it's perfect for cards like this. And then I grabbed my Blueprints 1 and Blueprints 2 dies from MFT. Totally not necessary, but I'm all of a sudden obsessed with these dies. Just because the two biggest dies in each set create these perfect card layers. And yeah, you don't have to measure or anything. I just run it through my die cut machine with those. And then I've got two perfectly perfect layers that will then layer nicely on an A2 card front. So you guys might be seeing this kind of a lot because yeah, anything that requires me to think less is totally good in my books. So I die cut the one pattern paper with that, and then the name escapes me at the moment. I'm sure it's actually a current. It was a Stampin' Up! In color, this kind of aqua teal color. Pulled that out of my stash anyway. I didn't have a label for it. And I'm just stamping sentiments from my All About Teacher set. So I'm using Memento Teal Zeal ink and my stamp positioner to ink up and stamp this thank you stamp from the set. So I did that twice. And then I have some old Stampin' Up! This is like garden green cardstock, and then some Memento Cottage Ivy. And I'm stamping the second sentiment from the All About Teachers stamp set. And again, stamp positioner just to make things simple and keep it straight. And this one worked out perfectly that I could stamp it twice along the bottom of this scrap of cardstock. And that way I only have to cut it out once. So get that inked up and stamped. And then again, I'm just going to use my paper trimmer to trim it down into a little strip and then to cut them in half. You could use scissors for this, but when I'm able to do it, I like to use my paper trimmer because then my cuts are for sure straight. And then for the last part of the sentiment, again, same stamp set. I'm using the teacher stamp and some red cardstock, and I am coating it with my anti-static powder tool from EK Success. That just keeps the embossing powder from sticking to anything but the stamped image. And I'm inking up the teacher stamp with some white pigment ink. I love the look of white embossing on red. It just pops. So stamp positioner again, so that I get that nice and straight. Ink up the stamp, stamp it on the cardstock, and then I'm going to coat it with some detail white embossing powder, and then melt that with my heat tool. And I'm going to do this twice, so one for each card. And then once that's all done, I'm just going to trim it off with my paper trimmer again. And then I ended up trimming them all down even more. I left all that extra on each side of all the sentiments because I wasn't sure how I was going to position them on my card. But ended up cutting them all down so that it's not completely covering that little main image. And then I'm going to add another piece of pattern paper just to bring a little bit of the yellow in. And then I had this AmyR's ribbon in my stash, which is perfect for these cards. It doesn't really match the yellow, you know, the pattern papers, but you can get away with it with something like this. Yeah, with all the white in the ribbon and that, it totally works in my opinion. So wrap that around my card fronts and tied it in a bow. And then I'm just going to adhere both of these little main images just flat to the cards. Just adjusting my ribbon. I trimmed it down a little bit because I didn't like how the tails of the ribbon were covering that little apple and the worm. That was totally bothering me. So adjusted the ribbon a bit and trimmed things off a bit more. And then the first sentiment I'm going to adhere off to the side. And then the teacher one, I'm going to pop that up on dimensionals. So it just gives that a little bit extra dimension and really makes it stand out even more. And then finally, the third sentiment that says, for all that you do, I'm going to just adhere that flat below the main image. And that's going to finish off my card front. So did that to the second card front. And then I'm going to adhere these to my card bases, which are standard A2 size, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and same red cardstock as the main sentiment. So once I've got both card fronts adhered to the bases, I want to do the insides. So I grabbed 2 more pattern papers from the pack and one of the Blueprints dies. This one is from Blueprints 2. Pretty sure anyway, and ran it through at the same time. Since these pattern papers are so thin, it's easy to just run it all through at the same time. And then one more sentiment from my For the Teachers stamp set, or All About Teachers stamp set, sorry. I coated the last of that red cardstock again with the anti-static powder tool, and I'm going to ink up this little sentiment with the white pigment ink again and stamp that onto the cardstock using my stamp positioner so it's just straight. Makes for much easier trimming. And this time I just did it all at the same time, so just flipped it around, inked up the stamp, used the stamp positioner, and then I'm going to get both of these off of the one sheet all in one step so I don't have to put everything away, or yeah, it just makes things quicker. So get out my little coffee filter and pour on the detail white embossing powder, and then heat both of those with my heat tool until they're completely melted. So, and then before I forget, I'm going to funnel back all that embossing powder back in the container and put the lid on because I have a tendency to knock those things over like it's crazy. So clean all that up, get it out of the way, and then pull out my paper trimmer again so I can trim off the excess cardstock on these. And then I'm just going to adhere those to the 2 little grid line pencil die cuts. The grid line is so faint that it works to just write your message to the recipient with a ballpoint pen and it's not going to interfere. And then I love the little pencils along the bottom. It just continues with the whole fun little theme. So I'm going to adhere those to the inside of my cards, and that's all there was to it. So as always, there will be a link below the video to my blog post with all the pictures posted and the info and the links to the supplies and all that fun stuff. as well as all the supplies will be linked below the video as well, so just be sure to check out the description box below. Thank you guys so much for watching and thumbs upping and subscribing to my videos, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!